The day's final light bled across the sky as John secured the last bundle of harvested grain. His back ached from hours bent over the fields at the edge of the settlement. This remote agricultural outpost, established after the war, had become his sanctuary, a place where solitude was as dependable as the changing seasons. Sweat dried cold on his skin as he surveyed his modest farm. The barley fields stretched toward the horizon, golden and ready for tomorrow's collection. A soft wind brushed through the remaining stalks, whispering secrets only the earth understood. Insects hummed their evening chorus, the sound both comforting and melancholy in its familiarity. John gathered his tools. Another day completed, another day alone. The routine had become his armor against memories and regrets. He shouldered his bag and trudged toward the gate, already imagining the simple dinner awaiting him. Bread he'd baked that morning, vegetables from his garden, perhaps the last of the preserved meat from winter. As he reached for the latch, a sound broke through the evening calm. Tap, tap, tap. John froze, his hands suspended in midair. The settlement had strict rules about curfew, and visitors rarely came this far from the main colony. Tap, 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 gentle but insistent. He peered through the gathering dusk toward the road. 3 figures stood there, one tall, 2 small, silhouettes against the dying light. Dust swirled around them, carried by the evening breeze. "Hello?" John called, his voice betraying wariness. "Who's there?" The tallest figure stepped forward, and John's breath caught in his throat. Even in the fading light, there was no mistaking what she was. The elongated limbs, the slight shimmer to her skin, the distinctive ridge along her forehead, all markers of a centro, one of the alien species that had caused such devastation during the war. Behind her, 2 small children clung to her legs, their eyes enormous in gaunt faces. They couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 Earth years old, though with centros, it was always difficult to tell. "Please," the woman said, her voice surprisingly melodic despite the clearly practiced human speech. "We need help." She stood straighter, a flash of pride crossing her features despite her obvious exhaustion. "I will work your fields, human. Just feed my hungry children." John hesitated, his hand tightening on the gate. The settlement had survived the Centro attacks a decade ago, but barely. Many families still mourned their losses. If anyone discovered he was harboring Centros, the smaller child whimpered, a sound that transcended species. In that moment, John faced a choice that would alter the course of his carefully constructed isolation. Shut the gate against the dangers these strangers represented, or open it to their desperate need. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of coming rain. Night would fall soon, and with it, the temperature would drop significantly. The children were trembling already. John unlatched the gate. "Come in," he said quietly. Quickly. Relief flooded the woman's face, though wariness remained in her eyes. She ushered the children forward, and John noticed how her own steps faltered with exhaustion. "My house is this way," he said, gesturing toward the small structure silhouetted against the darkening sky. "I have food." At the mention of food, the children's eyes widened further, but they remained silent, clinging to the woman's tattered clothing. Inside his modest home, John stoked the fire in the hearth, adding logs until a cheerful blaze chased away the evening chill. The woman positioned herself between the children and John, her stance protective despite her evident fatigue. "Sit," John said, pointing to the chairs by the fire. "Please." The woman hesitated, then guided the children to sit. They perched on the edge of the seats, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. John moved to his kitchen area, conscious of the woman's eyes following his every move. He ladled thick vegetable soup into bowls, cut generous slices of bread, and carried the simple meal to his unexpected guests. "Eat," he said, setting the food on the small table before them. The children looked to the woman, who nodded once. They fell upon the food with a desperate hunger that made John's heart clench. The woman, however, didn't touch her portion. "You should eat too," John said. She shook her head. "The children first." "There's plenty," John assured her. "I have more." Still, she hesitated, pride warring with hunger in her eyes. "I made a promise," John said quietly. "Food for all of you in exchange for work. If you don't eat, you won't have strength to work. That would break our agreement." A flicker of something, perhaps amusement, crossed her face. She picked up the spoon and began to eat, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, as her body reminded her how long it had been since her last meal. When they had finished, John showed them to the small room he used for storage. He'd hastily cleared a space and laid down pallets made from spare blankets. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. "We'll talk more in the morning." The woman nodded, ushering the children into the room. Before closing the door, she turned to John. "Thank you," she said. The words formal, practiced, but sincere. John nodded awkwardly. "Good night." He retreated to his own room, but sleep eluded him. Hours later, he rose to check on his guests, padding quietly through the darkened house. Through the partially open door, he saw the woman sitting upright against the wall, her eyes open, watchful. The children slept curled against her, their breathing deep and even. Their gazes met in the dim light. Neither spoke. After a moment, John returned to his bed, wondering what morning would bring. Dawn arrived with the gentle persistence of light that had marked countless mornings on John's farm. He rose early, as was his habit, and found his alien guest already awake, standing by the window, her posture tense with vigilance. "Good morning," John said, keeping his voice low to avoid waking the children who still slept. The woman turned, inclining her head in acknowledgement. "What work do you require of me?" she asked, direct and to the point. John considered her for a moment. Despite her determined stance, exhaustion lined her face and body. "When did you last sleep properly?" he asked. She blinked, clearly surprised by the question. "Sleep is a luxury I cannot afford." "You'll need your strength for farm work," John pointed out. "And your children need you healthy." "They are not," she began, then stopped herself. "I will do whatever work is necessary." John decided not to press the matter of the children's relationship to her. Instead, he gestured toward the kitchen. "I was about to make bread. Do you know how?" She shook her head. "Then that's your first lesson," John said. "Farming isn't just field work." In the kitchen, John laid out flour, salt, yeast, and water. He demonstrated how to combine the ingredients, explaining each step as the woman watched with intense concentration. "Now you try," he said, stepping back to give her space. Her long fingers worked the dough awkwardly at first, but with increasing confidence. John noticed scars crisscrossing her hands, old injuries that spoke of hard labor, or worse. "What should I call you?" John asked as she kneaded. She paused, considering. "Sina," she finally said. "My name is Sina." "I'm John." "I know," Sina said. "Your name is on the signpost at your gate." John nodded, surprised she could read human script. "And the children?" Sina's hands stilled. "The boy is Milo. The girl is Tella." She resumed, kneading with more force than necessary. "They are in my care." John recognized the evasion but didn't challenge it. "The dough needs to rise now," he said instead. "We'll bake it later. Are you hungry?" As if summoned by the question, the children appeared in the doorway, sleep-tousled and wary. "Good morning," John said, smiling at them. "Would you like breakfast?" They looked to Sina, who nodded her permission. John prepared a simple meal of porridge, sweetened with the last of his preserved summer berries. The children ate with the focused intensity of those who had known true hunger. After breakfast, John showed Sina the basic chores around the farm, feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, watering the kitchen garden. She learned quickly, her movements becoming more fluid as she grew accustomed to the tasks. The children followed, wide-eyed but silent, sticking close to Sina's side. Occasionally, John caught them watching him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. As the day progressed, John noticed Sina's vigilance never wavered. Even as she worked, her eyes scanned the horizon regularly, her body positioned to keep the children in sight at all times. Whatever had brought them to his door had left deep scars, not all of them visible. That evening, with the bread they'd made together baking in the oven and filling the house with its comforting aroma, John decided to risk breaking the careful distance between them. "Where did you come from?" he asked, as they sat by the fire. The children playing quietly with some wooden blocks John had found in his storage room. Sina's face closed instantly. "Does it matter?" "No," John admitted, "but I'd like to know." She stared into the flames for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was low, meant only for John's ears. "We escaped from a mining colony on Terrace Minor." John frowned. "The Trading Moon? I thought the settlements there were peaceful." A bitter smile twisted Sina's mouth. "Peace is relative, human, and expensive." "What do you mean?" "The settlements you know about are for humans and registered aliens," Sina explained. "Beneath them, literally beneath, are the labor camps where they keep the undesirables, refugees, war prisoners, anyone without papers or protection." John's stomach clenched. "And you were there, with the children?" Sina's gaze drifted to Milo and Tella. "I was there for 3 years. The children were born there, their parents." She swallowed hard. "There was an accident in the deep mines. Many died." "So you took them," John said softly. "No one else would," Sina replied, her voice hardening. "Centro children are worth nothing there. Less than nothing." "How did you escape?" "Carefully. Slowly." Sina's eyes met his, unflinching. "I planned for a year. Saved food. Memorized guard rotations. Stole an access card. Bribed a cargo pilot." Her hand unconsciously moved to her side, where John suspected another scar lay hidden. "Not everyone who helped us survived." "And you came here, to Earth?" "Where else?" Sina asked bitterly. "My homeworld was destroyed in the war. At least on Earth. We know what to expect. Hatred. But with rules. Laws that sometimes protect even us." John absorbed this in silence, watching the firelight play across Sina's face, highlighting the alien beauty there. Despite everything, there was a dignity to her that he couldn't help but admire. "I don't think you're less than human," he said finally. "I think you're stronger than most." Surprise flickered across Sina's features, quickly masked. She looked away, but not before John caught the shimmer of moisture in her eyes. The oven timer chimed, breaking the moment. "The bread is ready," John said, rising. "Let's see how your first attempt turned out." The loaf was slightly lopsided but perfectly baked. John sliced it while it was still warm, releasing a cloud of fragrant steam. He handed the first piece to Sina. "The baker gets the first taste," he said. "That's the rule." Sina accepted the bread, her expression solemn as if participating in a ritual. She took a small bite, and her eyes widened slightly. "Good?" John asked. She nodded. "Different from what I knew, but good." John cut pieces for the children next, who approached cautiously to accept the offering. Tella's face brightened at the first bite, and she smiled, the first genuine smile John had seen from either child. As they ate together by the fire, John felt something shift in the atmosphere of his home. For the first time in years, the silence held possibilities instead of memories. The next morning, John needed to go to the village market for supplies. He hesitated, aware that leaving Sina and the children alone might give them an opportunity to steal what they could and disappear. Yet, keeping them virtual prisoners wasn't an option he could stomach. I need to go to town, he told Sina as they fed the chickens together. Will you be all right here for a few hours? Sina gave him a long look, understanding the trust implicit in his question. We will be here when you return, she said finally. I gave my word to work for food. I do not break my promises. John nodded. There's bread and cheese in the kitchen. Help yourselves. As he walked the dusty path to the village, John found himself hurrying, eager to return to his farm in a way he hadn't been for years. The settlement's market occupied the central square, a bustling collection of stalls and shops where the colonists traded goods and gossip in equal measure. John moved efficiently from vendor to vendor, purchasing the supplies he needed: flour, salt, a new pair of work gloves, seeds for the next planting. At the butcher's stall, he ordered more meat than usual, thinking of the hollow-cheeked children at his home. Hungry these days, John? The butcher asked as he wrapped the purchase. Just stocking up, John replied neutrally. The butcher leaned closer, lowering his voice. Heard a rumor you might have company out at your place. John's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his expression neutral. Oh? Merrick's boy said he saw lights in your east field last night. Said there were people with you. The butcher raised an eyebrow. You taking on help? Just some travelers passing through, John said, forcing a casual shrug. Needed a place to rest. The butcher handed over the wrapped meat. Be careful with strangers these days, especially with the anniversary coming up. John didn't need to ask which anniversary. In 2 weeks, the settlement would mark 10 years since the Centro attack that had claimed so many lives. As he continued through the market, John became aware of whispers following him, sidelong glances, conversations that halted when he approached. By the time he reached the seed seller's stall, his shoulders were tight with tension. Is it true, John? Asked old Merrick, the village miller, approaching as John selected seed packets. You're harboring Centros at your farm? John froze. Where did you hear that? So it is true. Merrick's weathered face hardened. Have you forgotten what they did to us? To your own family? I haven't forgotten anything, John said quietly. But these are refugees, a woman and 2 children. They're no threat. No, Centro is harmless, said a voice from behind him. John turned to find 3 men he recognized as workers from the outer farms. The speaker, a burly man named Dorn, stepped forward. They're dangerous by nature, deceitful. You don't know what you're talking about, John said, anger rising in his chest. Don't I? Dorn's face flushed. My brother died in the attack. So did your wife. Or have you forgotten Sarah so quickly? John's fists clenched. Don't you dare use her name! They need to go, John, Merrick said, his tone softer but no less insistent. For everyone's safety, for your own. They have nowhere else to go, John argued. And they've done nothing wrong. They exist, Dorn spat. That's wrong enough. John looked around at the gathering crowd, seeing fear and anger on too many faces. Only a few looked troubled by the conversation, and none spoke up in his defense. I'm not turning away people who need help, John said firmly. Not for you, not for anyone. Then, you're a fool, Dorn said. And when they turn on you in your sleep, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. John left the market with his purchases and a heavy heart. The walk back to his farm seemed longer than usual, his thoughts churning with memories and fears. Sarah's face flashed in his mind, her smile, her laugh, the way she'd looked the last time he saw her alive, heading into town on the day of the attack. Would she approve of what he was doing? The question haunted him as he crested the final hill and his farm came into view. In the vegetable garden, Sina knelt, carefully weeding between rows of young plants. The children sat nearby in the shade of an apple tree, sorting pebbles into patterns. The scene was so peaceful, so ordinary, that John felt a surge of protectiveness. These weren't the monsters from his nightmares. They were people, different. Yes, but people nonetheless. Sina looked up as he approached, shielding her eyes against the sun. She rose gracefully, brushing dirt from her hands. "You were gone longer than expected," she said, and John detected a hint of worry beneath her composed exterior. "The market was busy," he said, not wanting to burden her with the hostility he'd encountered. Sina studied his face. "They know we're here," she stated, rather than asked. John sighed. "Yes. We should leave," Sina said immediately. "We bring danger to you." "No," John said firmly. "This is my farm and my decision. You're welcome to stay as long as you need." Sina tilted her head, regarding him with those otherworldly eyes. "Why?" The question was simple but profound. John considered it seriously. "Because it's right," he said finally. "And because I'm tired of being alone with ghosts." Something passed between them then, an understanding beyond words. Sina nodded once, accepting his answer and the complex emotions behind it. "The children helped me gather eggs," she said, changing the subject. "Tella has a way with the hens. They don't startle when she approaches." John smiled, grateful for the return to normal conversation. "That's a useful talent on a farm." They walked together toward the house. The weight of the village's disapproval temporarily lifted from John's shoulders. That evening, as they ate dinner, Milo spoke for the first time since their arrival. "Will the angry men come here?" he asked, his voice so soft John almost missed it. Sina and John exchanged glances. "No one will harm you," John said firmly. "This is a safe place." "But they hate us," Milo persisted, his large eyes troubled. "Because we're Centro." "Some people fear what they don't understand," John explained, choosing his words carefully. "And fear sometimes makes people angry." "Were you afraid of us?" Tella asked, joining the conversation with unexpected boldness. John considered the question honestly. "At first, yes, a little. But not now," she pressed. "No," John said, smiling at her. "Not now." "Why not?" Milo wanted to know. John looked at the children, then at Sina, who watched him with guarded curiosity. "Because I've learned that people are just people, no matter where they come from," he said. "And you three are good people who needed help. That's all that matters." Sina's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Later, as John washed the dishes, she joined him, taking each clean plate to dry. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for what you said to the children." John handed her another plate. "I meant it." "I know." Sina set the dried plate aside. "That's why I thanked you." They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes before Sina spoke again. "If your people come, if they demand we leave—" She hesitated. "We will go without resistance. I won't allow violence to touch your home because of us." "No one is coming," John said with more confidence than he felt. "And if they do, they'll have to deal with me first." Sina looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You would stand against your own kind for us." "I would stand for what's right," John corrected. "Against anyone." The days fell into a rhythm. Each morning, John and Sina worked together in the fields or the garden, the children gradually becoming more involved as their confidence grew. Tella revealed a natural talent for nurturing growing things, while Milo proved surprisingly adept at mechanical tasks, helping John repair farm equipment with clever fingers and a quick mind. In the evenings, they shared meals and stories. Sina spoke of her homeworld, its towering crystal forests, its 3 moons, the songs her people had sung to welcome the changing seasons. John described Earth's varied landscapes, its oceans and mountains, deserts and rainforests, places he'd only seen in pictures but had always dreamed of visiting. The children absorbed everything, their eyes wide with wonder at the universe beyond their limited experience. One night, after the children had gone to bed, Sina confessed to John that they had never known any life but the mines before their escape. "They were born in darkness," she said, her voice haunted. "Their first memories are of hunger and fear. Until we came here, they had never seen an open sky, never felt rain, never played without looking over their shoulders. And now they never will again, John promised. Sina looked at him, a question in her eyes. How can you be so certain? Because I won't let it happen, John said simply. 3 days after John's confrontation in the market, the threat he'd been dreading arrived. He was repairing the fence along the western boundary when he saw 3 figures approaching on the road. Even at a distance, he recognized Dorn's bulky silhouette. John set down his tools and walked to meet them at the gate. Behind him, he was aware of Sina calling the children inside, her instincts for danger as sharp as ever. "Afternoon," John said coolly as the men reached his property. "We've come to talk sense into you," Merrick said without preamble. The old miller looked uncomfortable, but determined. Beside him, Dorn's face was set in grim lines. The third man, a quiet farmer named Ellis, hung back slightly. "I'm listening," John said, making no move to open the gate. "The Centros need to go," Dorn stated flatly. "The whole settlement's talking about it. People are scared." John. "Of a woman and 2 children?" John asked incredulously. "Of what they represent," Merrick said. "Of what might follow them here." "Nothing's following them," John said. "They're refugees, not advanced scouts." "You can't know that," Dorn argued. "They're devious. They infiltrated 3 colonies before the war, posing as refugees. Look what happened." "That was a different group entirely," John pointed out. "You can't blame every Centro for the actions of a few." "We can't take the risk," Merrick insisted. "Not with the anniversary so close. People are already on edge." "So I should throw innocent people to the wolves because of timing?" John asked, anger rising in his voice. "What kind of man would that make me?" "A practical one." Ellis spoke up for the first time. "No one's saying to harm them. Just send them on their way. To the city, maybe, where there are alien districts. Where they'd be detained and probably separated," John said, having researched the regulations himself. The children would be sent to government facilities. Sina would likely be deported. There's nowhere for Centro refugees to go that's safe. "That's not our problem," Dorn said harshly. "It's my problem," John countered, "because I made it mine when I gave them shelter." "You need to think about your place in this community," Merrick warned. "People have long memories, John. They'll remember which side you chose." "I'm not choosing sides," John said. "I'm choosing humanity, something you all seem to have forgotten." Dorn stepped closer to the gate, his face flushing with anger. "You're choosing them over your own kind, over Sarah's memory." "Don't you dare," John growled, his hands gripping the gate. "Sarah would have been the first to open our door to people in need. You know that as well as I do." "You've got 3 days," Dorn said, ignoring John's words. "Get them off your property, or we'll take matters into our own hands." "Is that a threat?" John asked quietly. "It's a promise," Dorn replied. "For the good of everyone." "If anyone threatens my guests," John said, his voice dangerously calm, "they won't continue to exist." The men stared at each other for a long moment before Merrick placed a restraining hand on Dorn's arm. "Think about what we've said, John," the old miller pleaded. "Please." The 3 men turned and began walking back toward the settlement. John watched them go, his heart pounding with a mixture of anger and fear. When he returned to the house, Sina was waiting by the window, her expression grave. "We heard," she said simply. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You defended us." Sina's eyes held his. "No one has ever done that before." "They won't bother you," John promised. "I won't let them." "They'll come back," Sina said, stating a fact rather than expressing fear. "And next time, there will be more of them. Then I'll face more of them." Sina studied him, her alien features softening with emotion John couldn't quite name. "Why? Why risk so much for us?" John considered the question, searching for the words to explain the complex emotions that had developed over their short time together. "Because you've made my life better," he said finally. My house was just a place to sleep before you came. Now it's a home again." Sina looked away, but not before John caught the shimmer of tears in her eyes. "We'll leave tomorrow," she said, her voice low but firm. "I won't be responsible for bringing violence to your door." "No," John said, reaching out to touch her arm, the first time he had initiated contact between them. "Please, stay." Sina looked down at his hand on her arm, then back at his face. Something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that transcended their differences. "We'll see what tomorrow brings," she said, neither accepting nor rejecting his plea. That night, John lay awake, listening to the wind rising outside. The weather had been turning for days, the air growing heavy with the promise of the season's first major storm. Normally, he welcomed the rain that would nourish his winter crops. But tonight the approaching storm felt ominous. He must have dozed eventually, because he woke with a start to the sound of thunder rumbling in the distance. Gray morning light filtered through his window. The air felt charged, electric with the coming storm. John rose and dressed quickly. If the storm was as severe as it felt, he needed to prepare the farm, securing loose items, ensuring the drainage ditches were clear, bringing the chickens into their sheltered coop. In the kitchen, he found Sina already awake, staring out the window at the darkening sky. "Bad storm coming," John said, pouring himself a cup of the tea she had prepared. Sina nodded. "The air tastes like the deep mines before a collapse. Heavy. Wrong." John glanced at her, struck by the comparison. "We need to prepare the farm. Together." They woke the children and hurriedly ate breakfast. Outside, the wind had strengthened, bending the younger trees and sending fallen leaves skittering across the yard. "The children should stay inside," John said as they finished eating. "It's safer." Sina nodded. "Milo, Tella, you'll stay here. Close the shutters if the wind gets stronger. Stay away from the windows." The children nodded solemnly, well practiced in following instructions that might save their lives. Outside, John and Sina worked quickly, moving from task to task with an efficiency born of their days working together. They secured tools, reinforced the chicken coop, and checked that all the buildings were properly sealed against the coming rain. The storm moved faster than John had anticipated. By mid-morning, the sky had darkened to an ominous slate gray, and distant lightning flashed on the horizon. The wind had become a constant force, carrying the first spatters of rain. John was checking the drainage ditch that ran along the edge of his main field when he noticed a problem. A fallen branch had partially blocked the channel, and with the amount of rain predicted, the blockage could cause flooding that would damage his nearly mature winter wheat. "We need to clear this," he called to Sina over the rising wind. "If this ditch floods, we could lose half the crop." Sina joined him, surveying the problem. "How?" "We'll need to dig a wider channel around the blockage," John explained, already heading to the tool shed for shovels, "and reinforce the banks so they don't collapse." By the time they returned to the ditch, the rain had begun in earnest, driven sideways by the howling wind. They worked frantically, digging through the increasingly muddy soil as water began to rise in the ditch. The sky darkened further, and thunder crashed overhead. Rain pelted them, soaking through their clothes and making the ground treacherous underfoot. Despite the difficulty, Sina worked tirelessly beside John, her movements precise and determined even as mud caked her hands and splattered her face. "We need to extend the channel this way," John shouted over the storm, pointing toward a natural depression in the land. "The water can flow there without damaging the crops." Sina nodded, already digging in the direction he indicated. Her clothes clung to her slender frame, her hair plastered to her skull by the relentless rain, but she showed no sign of slowing. The work was brutal. Every shovelful of mud seemed heavier than the last. The rain-soaked ground constantly threatened to collapse back into their newly dug channel. John's muscles screamed with the effort, his breathing harsh in his own ears. Beside him, Sina labored with equal intensity, her alien strength proving a match for the task. When John paused briefly to catch his breath, he was struck by the sight of her, covered in Earth's mud, fighting to save his crops with the same determination she had shown in escaping the mines and protecting her adopted children. The moment of reflection cost him. As John stepped forward to resume digging, his foot slipped on the muddy bank. Pain shot through his leg as a cramp seized his calf muscle, and he went down hard, sliding toward the now rushing water of the drainage ditch. Instantly, Sina was there, strong hands gripping his arms, pulling him back from the edge. Rain streamed down her face as she leaned close. "Don't fall now," she shouted over the storm's fury. "We're not finished." With her help, John regained his footing. Together, they completed the emergency channel, reinforcing its banks with rocks and packed earth. Water began flowing through their creation, diverting safely away from the vulnerable wheat field. As the immediate danger passed, John became aware of how cold and exhausted he was. Sina, too, was shivering, though she made no complaint. "We should get inside," John said, touching her arm to get her attention through the noise of the storm. Sina nodded, her eyes moving to survey the farm one last time before they retreated. The rain had settled into a steady downpour, and while the wind still blew fiercely, the worst of the immediate danger seemed to have passed. Inside the house, they found the children huddled by the fire, wide-eyed but safe. Tella rushed to Sina as they entered, wrapping her arms around the muddy woman without hesitation. "We were scared," she admitted. "The thunder is so loud." "It's just the sky talking," Sina said, smoothing the child's hair with a muddy hand. "Nothing to fear." John built up the fire while Sina helped the children prepare a simple meal. After they had eaten and changed into dry clothes, exhaustion caught up with them all. The children fell asleep by the fire, and even Sina's vigilant posture relaxed as she sat beside them, her eyes growing heavy. John watched as she finally surrendered to sleep, her head nodding forward until she was slumped against the chair, one hand still resting protectively near the children. For the first time since he had met her, her face was completely unguarded, the constant tension eased by exhaustion. In that moment, looking at the three of them, alien in form, but so fundamentally similar in their needs and emotions, John knew, with absolute certainty, that he would not let them go. Whatever came tomorrow, they would face it together. The storm raged through the night, but by morning had spent its fury. John woke to weak sunlight, filtering through breaks in the clouds. Outside, puddles dotted the yard, and branches lay scattered across the property. But the damage was less than he had feared. Most importantly, the drainage channel he and Sina had dug had held, protecting the wheat crop that represented their food security for the coming months. As John stepped outside to survey the farm, he noticed movement on the road leading to his property. A group of people were approaching, far more than the three who had confronted him yesterday. His heart sank. Had Dorn rallied the settlement against them so quickly? He braced himself for confrontation, but as the group drew closer, he realized their demeanor wasn't threatening. Old Merrick led them, carrying something in his arms. Behind him came the butcher, the seed seller, and several other villagers John recognized. Sina appeared at his side, instantly alert. "What's happening?" "I don't know," John admitted, "but stay close." Together, they walked to meet the approaching group at the gate. John positioned himself slightly in front of Sina, his stance protective. "Morning, John," Merrick called as they drew near. "Thought we'd check how you fared in the storm." "We're fine," John said cautiously. "Farm's intact." Merrick nodded, glancing past John to where Sina stood. "Your fields look better than most. The Baker place is half underwater. Ellis lost a good portion of his east field." John said nothing, waiting for the real purpose of this visit to emerge. Merrick cleared his throat, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "Look, John, I owe you, and your friend here, an apology. I spoke poorly yesterday, said things I shouldn't have. John blinked, taken aback. What changed your mind? Saw the work you two did during the storm, the miller said, gesturing toward the drainage ditch, visible from the road. Passed by on my way to check the mill. Saw you both out there in the worst of it, working together to save the crop. He shook his head. Made me think about what I said, about sides and such. John glanced at Sina, who remained expressionless, though he could sense her wariness. Anyway, Merrick continued, I wanted to make amends. He held out the bundle in his arms, a stack of folded clothing. For the lady and the young ones. My wife's been keeping these for the donation box. But, well, they'd do more good here. Seems like. John was speechless. Beside him, Sina's eyes widened slightly. And I brought some meat, the butcher spoke up, stepping forward with a wrapped package. Growing children need protein. Even Centro children. One by one, the villagers came forward, offering what they could. Vegetables from their gardens, tools, a small toy carved from wood. Each made their own awkward peace offering, some mumbling apologies, others simply nodding respectfully to Sina. Where's Dorn? John asked finally, noticing the man's absence. Home, nursing a black eye, the butcher said with a hint of satisfaction. Got to talking too loud at the tavern last night about taking care of the Centro problem. Several of us disagreed with his approach. John wasn't sure whether to laugh or express concern. There won't be trouble over that, I hope. Dorn's all bluster, Merrick said dismissively. He'll cool down eventually, and if he doesn't... The old man shrugged. Well, he'll find himself pretty lonely in his opinions. After the villagers departed, promising to return with more supplies in the coming days. John and Sina stood in stunned silence, looking at the pile of gifts. I don't understand, Sina said finally. Why would they change their minds so completely? John considered the question. People fear what they don't know. Yesterday, you were a faceless enemy, a reminder of past pain. Today, you're the woman who helped save a farm during the worst storm in years. He smiled slightly. It's harder to hate someone who works beside you. Sina looked down at her hands, still bearing the marks of yesterday's labor. On my world, there was a saying, shared struggle reveals true nature. Perhaps your people understand this too. Perhaps they do. John agreed. He hesitated, then plunged ahead with the decision he had made during the night. Sina, I want you and the children to stay, not as guests or workers, but as partners in this place. She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, I'm offering you a home, John said. Permanently, if you want it. Sina's expression was unreadable. Why would you do this? Because I was drowning in solitude before you came, John admitted. Because you and the children have brought life back to this place. Because... He took a deep breath. Because I care about you. All of you. Sina turned away, her shoulders rigid. For a long moment, she was silent, and John feared he had overstepped. I have nothing to offer in return, she said finally, her voice barely audible. Nothing but my labor and my gratitude. That's not true, John countered gently. You've already given me more than you know. When Sina turned back to him, her eyes held a vulnerability he had never seen before. The children need stability, she said. Safety. A place to grow without fear. They can have that here, John promised. And you would not regret this decision when the novelty fades? John shook his head. This isn't about novelty, Sina. It's about finding something I didn't know I was missing. A week later, John visited the settlement's administration office. He returned with a document that he presented to Sina that evening after the children had gone to bed. What is this? She asked, examining the official paper with its stamps and signatures. A deed, John explained. "To the eastern quarter of the farm. It's yours now. Legally." Sina's hands trembled slightly as she held the document. "You're giving me land. Why?" "Because everyone deserves something that's truly theirs," John said. "Something no one can take away." Sina stared at the deed, her expression a complex mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and something deeper that John dared not name yet. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll stay," John replied simply. "Say you'll help me make this farm thrive. Say you'll let the children put down roots here." Sina looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "Yes," she said, "to all of it." As spring approached, the farm took on new life. Sina planted a garden of her own on her portion of the land, experimenting with earth vegetables, alongside a few alien plants whose seeds she had carried with her from her homeworld. The children attended the settlement school, initially viewed with curiosity, but gradually accepted by their peers. John built an addition to the house, a proper bedroom for Sina adjacent to the children's room. The villagers helped, many of the same men who had once viewed the Centros with suspicion, now working alongside John to create a more comfortable home for the unusual family. One evening, as John and Sina sat on the porch watching the children play in the yard, Sina spoke of the future for the first time. "Milo asked me yesterday if this is our forever home," she said, her gaze following the children as they chased each other through the tall grass. "What did you tell him?" John asked. "I told him that nothing in life is truly forever," Sina replied. "But that some things last long enough to build a life around." She turned to John, her expression open in a way it had rarely been before. Was that the right answer? John reached out, taking her hand in his, a gesture that had once been unthinkable but now felt as natural as breathing. "It was perfect," he said, as the sun set over the fields they had saved together, casting golden light across the land that was now partly hers. Sina's fingers tightened around John's. Neither spoke of love. That word remained unvoiced between them. A seed planted, but not yet ready to flower. But in the comfortable silence, in the sound of children's laughter, in the shared work of creating something lasting from desperation and chance, there was promise enough. An alien woman had come to his door with nothing but determination and a plea. "I'll work your fields, human. Just feed my hungry children." What she couldn't have known, what John himself hadn't realized until she arrived, was how hungry his own soul had been, how empty his fields despite their bounty. Now, watching the makeshift family that had formed around him, alien and human, bound not by blood but by choice, John knew that the truest harvests had nothing to do with wheat or barley, but with the hearts that found shelter in each other when the storms came.